Right. Good morning, guys. Sorry I couldn't join the class last week, so we had to move it to today. We'll be talking about user experience deliverables. Then tomorrow we'll look at user experience research and we'll close from there. But one thing, I'll provide extra links so that you can look at most of the stuff after the class, because I can't cover every single thing in the one-on-one. So it's up to you to do extra studies. Good morning, Rega. I'm fine. Thank you for asking. All right, so I'll get right into it. User experience deliverables. User experience deliverables. What are they? Now, what does a UX designer actually produce? I think in our very first class, one of the guys was asking what information architecture was, what user flow was, what this was, because he said he had heard the terminologies a lot and he didn't really know what they were about. These terminologies are actual deliverables you provide in the career world or in your UX process. Now, one thing you need to know is they differ from company to company, from individual to individual, because some people might skip certain steps or certain process to produce something, right? For example, I don't really spend a lot of time working on user flow, so it's not really something I'll provide as a deliverable, but someone will also do that because will probably speed up their workflow or something like that. Now, deliverables, it helps UX designers communicate with various stakeholders and teams, document work, and provide artifacts for meetings and engaging sections. Now let's take let's see Wireframe as an example. If Wireframe is taken out as a deliverable, it will be difficult to communicate your ideas or whatever sketch you have in your head to stakeholders and other team members. So it's a way of helping communicate with other team members like stakeholders, developers, project managers, and all that. Let's look at second definition. It describes the output of a UX process during its various stages. The deliverables produced by UX designers vary according to their role in the design team and also depending on the methods and tools used by each role. So like I mentioned earlier on, it differs, right, from company to company. The process they use, like I mentioned, the UX design processes are very, very different in every company, but then there's a general one everybody uses out there. So depending on the processes you are using, after each step in that process, you'll produce a particular UX process. For example, after your very first step in the UX process, which we look at discovery, that's to build a persona. Right, we'll look at what that is very shortly. One second. I'll be looking at persona, storyboard, sitemap, user flow, wireframe, prototyping, prototypes, user experience writing, and visual design. The other one, usability reports, user testing, document. See if I can add that to tomorrow's class. Now, a persona, you've probably heard it before. It's a fictional character which you create based upon your research to represent the different user types that might use your service, product, site, or in a similar. Creating personas will help you understand your users' need, experience, behaviors, and goals. Now, remember in our first or second class last 2 weeks, I mentioned that in research, you can't realize that the user pool is a very huge. For example, let's say you have 100 users. Every user is going to be unique in their way. Probably user wants to use your product to do something like, let's just call it A. User, 1 second, guys. user 2 probably wants to use your product to achieve their second need. So every user will have what they want to use the application for. Maybe someone would want to use their bank app to be sending airtime or doing little purchases. Someone would want to use it to save. It differs, right? That's one. Secondly, the environment user A will probably find themselves in a very different from the environment user B will find themselves. The kind of product user A uses, or let's say application user A uses, will be different from the second user. Then again, their age is also going to be a factor. I mean, we can agree that our parents are very, let me say, bad at using mobile application because they'll probably be more that and all. But then people are very familiar with a lot of stuff, so we get to see or use the products very easily. All these things play a major role in user experience design, right? Now, you can't design for each specific user. So what the persona does is you take all this information you've gathered outside from research and then craft it into one unique thing. So you see it's a fictional character. It's not actually real. Based on, let's say, the 10 interviews we did, we decided to build a persona based on the information we got. So when we look at that persona, it's going to represent all the 10 people we interviewed, taking into consideration their user needs, their day-to-day activities, their products they use, their devices they use, and all those. Now, the second definition, persona is a fictional character created to represent a user type that might use a product in a similar way. So like I just said, personas make it easier for designers to create empathy with users throughout the design process. So the whole purpose is for you to be able to relate with it, right? You know that you're designing for an actual human being and not just anything, right? So you create a persona, you look at it, the persona has a name, it has an age, it has a family. So you know that this is an actual human being, so you relate with it as such. There's an example of a persona. How it is designed, it doesn't really matter. I use tools so that you get that. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that all the necessary information are in. So if we look at the second one here, you realize that Bridget has an age, she has an occupation, she's single, she lives in New York. She's a marketer. You have a picture, and then she's like, I would like to find and learn skills that will help me grow my business footprint online. This is Bridget. This is what Bridget wants to use that particular product for. Now, you add things like her motivations, right? Her goals, her frustrations, her bio, her actions, her personality, her technology. If you look at both of them, you realize that they are very, very the same. Other personas will add things like the branch likes, like over here, and then the pain points and concerns. So basically what pain points and concerns means is maybe she's someone who likes to order stuff online. What are her pain points with the current flows out there, right? So she probably doesn't like how long those processes are. So that's persona. Now, example of a user persona, demographic, skills, goals, frustrations are represented visually or in text. So this is what persona is. Now, most of the time, depending on the size of the project, you might not really need to build a persona because maybe, a client has already come, they just want a redesign of their app. You don't have to go and build a persona. You just waste your time. So you can just ignore that step and then proceed. This is mostly used when you are building a new solution, or let's say the problem is actually new and you are trying to find who your actual users are going to be, right? So it's not every single time that you build it. Maybe you get a freelance gig and then you would want to do persona. No, it's not really necessary if the project is not that huge. Now, the second thing is storyboard. It's an idea borrowed from the movie industry. It essentially consists of a comic strip outlining the user's action and circumstances under which these are performed. The second definition is a visual exercise that helps product managers and their development teams define the work that will create the most delightful user experience. It is used to improve teams' understanding of their customers and to prioritize work. So I'll show you an example and I'll explain. If you look at the left side, this is a storyboard. So what it does is it has a sketch of an environment and what the user will probably be doing. Like they mentioned, it's from like the movie industry. So if you look at the left side, this is the user. We need more post-its, makes note of supply. So you just add additional text and then drawings to kind of represent what you actually want. This time I'm not just using boxes, but I am building the environment the user the user can find themselves in. So if you look at the second steps, it says this is James Dex. He selects an items from his favorite list, and then he uses desktop plus supply list as tool. Then the next step is the scenario. It receives shipment window, blah, blah, blah. So just basically combining the user's actual experience in the real world and the environment into a kind of flow. That's storyboarding. Any question at this point before I proceed? In the chat section, if you have any question. Okay, all right, let me continue. There. Now, sitemap. Last week we looked at last week we looked at UX principle, and then I touched on visual hierarchy, where I mentioned about visual hierarchy itself, and then we looked at hierarchy, and then I spoke about visual hierarchy and then architecture, information architecture, right? UX deliverables, I really don't get it. Okay, let me just go a step back. Now, what I mentioned UX deliverable is helps UX designers communicate with various stakeholders and teams, document work, and provide artifacts for meeting and ideation sections. So design a storyboard, I'm coming. So basically what UX deliverable is what a designer will produce at the end of their work day. Let me put it that way. So let's use let me see. Let's use an architect as an example. An architect at the end of the work, they will provide you a drawing of how the building should look like. So as a UX designer, as a user experience designer, what are you going to produce at the end of the day? And that's what is termed UX deliverables or deliverables. So when you're done doing your research, you provide a persona. When you're done doing this, you build a storyboard, you build a user flow, you build an architecture. That's basically what deliverables are. And I mentioned a few of them. I've mentioned persona, I've mentioned storyboard, and I'm on the third one, which is sitemap. Now, like I was saying, I mentioned visual hierarchy and information architecture like last week. So sitemap is a visually organized model of all the components and information contained in a digital product. It represents the organization of an app or site's content. UX designers often create similar sitemaps to show the hierarchy and application structure of a website or an application. Such maps are often produced for mobile apps as well. Now, it's just a way to structure the whole website, the whole mobile application, like we looked at, where you have maybe the topmost important stuff and then take the user to a linear process, if I may call it, of how the structure is supposed to look like. I covered this last week on information architecture. Do you design a storyboard with Pencil? Yeah, but most of the times, if you have an illustrator on the team, you can probably let them do that because it's mostly sketches. So you don't want to do a lot of work. You can do it with pen and paper, or if you have an iPad, you can do it with any of the digital applications that enable that. But if you're lucky to have an illustrator, you can do that. You can let them help you in building a storyboard. Let me go over the storyboard again. So it's an idea borrowed from the movie industry. It essentially consists of a comic strip outlining the user's action and circumstances under which these are performed. So the whole purpose of a storyboard is to visualize the flow of a user in your application. Is to visualize the user's flow in your application, because you might have the flow in your head, but then you will not be able to visually represent it. So what storyboard does is it takes the concept from movie industry of where they probably sketch how their scene is supposed to look like and then write little text under it. So same thing in the UX world. You have your flow. You know that the user moves from step A to step B to C, D, and not. what you do is you just take each step and then break it down into a storyboarding. So with sketches and text and what the user will be doing here and all that. So if we look at the example I have over here, it gives more stuff than just putting boxes like the way a user flow will look like or the way a sitemap will look like. You get it? Now, this is not something you really do a lot. This is not something you really do a lot, especially if, like, again, you're working on smaller projects, so not really necessary. This is when maybe you have a very huge project and the ideas are not very clear. You would want to build a storyboard to be able to define each task separately. Get it? What's the other question? Now, sitemap is this yes and no. Is it the same as information architecture? Yes and no. We looked at information architecture to be, where is it? Let me read. How content is organized across the Apple sites focuses on organizing, streaming, and living content in an effective and sustainable way. The goal is to help users find information and complete tasks. The top level of the hierarchy is generally a primary navigation menu that includes the main section. So sitemap is under information architecture. Information architecture is basically how the website is built, the architecture of the website, and sitemap is what is produced, which is this. So what you see here is a sitemap. Get it? Point 4. Those who had the sitemap is the same as the storyboard, information architecture. Confirm if you get it. Point 4, user flow. This I also looked at last week. Now, in UX design, it's the user's path to finish a specific purpose. It includes each step from the starting point to the end point. User flow in UX design works well in the app and the website design. The user experience designer can be aware of how to optimize or generate a design work with a better user experience. So the whole purpose of building, okay, let me see if I can break this down. What was the person's name? Kolade. I just hope I pronounced that correct. Let me see how I can break this down. Let me go to hierarchy again. So remember last 2 weeks when we looked at hierarchy, and I mentioned there's a way of creating an importance in a design, right? And we looked at the 2 types of hierarchy: visual hierarchy, information architecture. Now, visual hierarchy, it helps designers navigate more easily within an app or a page. Then I showed you an example of a web page, like the Figma web page, where they have this big text and the colors to differentiate the importance, right? Then we looked at what information architecture is, to be how the website is organized. So if you jump on a website, the architecture of the website is how it's organized. The sitemap is a product of an information architecture. So you don't build an information architecture. So this image we are looking at here would be termed as a sitemap if you are explaining it to someone, but then it helps you get the architecture of the website right. Did you get what I'm trying to say? So information architecture is all about, let me go to Chrome. It's all about how, which website should I open? It's all about how a website is structured. So where they place the sign in, the sign up, and all that. But then that is built using what we call a sitemap. It's the same thing as a user flow, right? It's the process that user go through to accomplish something. But then what you produce at the end of the day is what is termed as a user flow. So this thing over here with the boxes, diamonds, circles is what a user flow is. But then it's a flow, right? So let me see. So information architecture is a term. the big umbrella, and then the sitemap is what is produced of it. Or a sitemap helps you to provide the information architecture or the architecture of a website well. So we have Amazon, good. This we can everything we are seeing here has to do with the architecture of the website, where the cart is, where the sign-in is, where the category section is, and all that. And then to be able to arrive at getting the architecture of the website right, you need to build a site map to help you achieve that. Do you get it? So you can say it's the same thing. You can say it's not the same thing. Does that mean sitemap is like a summary? Good. So yes, good. So sitemap is like the summary of that information architecture. So we look at this website, Amazon. What is the architecture of the website? How does it look like? The sitemap has been used to visually represent that. So if we look at the sitemap, for example, it shows you that the dashboard is the main thing. So in the sense of Amazon, this web page or this landing page you're seeing or the homepage is the first thing. Then we can have the sub stuff. So maybe the category, the search, then maybe the sign-in and all that. So the sitemap just summarizes everything. But then you need a sitemap to be able to get architecture. So this is going to guide whoever is designing this, the website. So yes, it's a summary of the information architecture. Can you clarify the difference between user flow and user onboarding, especially user onboarding? Okay, so we looked at user onboarding last time. User onboarding is not a deliverable. It's part of a flow. It's part of a mobile application, like I showed you guys the last time. Let's go to mobile. So we've all downloaded apps for like the very first time. When you download the application, they take you through a series of screens where they tell you what the application is about. That is the user onboarding. They are just onboarding you to the application. So they'll tell you, so application will help you do that, help you do that, help you do that. And most of the time, 1 second. Let me show you an example of an onboarding internet. So yeah, so you download the application, they take you through, probably most of the time it's mostly like 3 screens, and then they tell you what the application is all about. That's onboarding. I'm coming on to get a visual thing to show you. Oh, this thing is taking forever to load. Okay, good. This is an example. So you've downloaded the app, you are in, and then they show you like 3 key things. Remind the statistics. So just onboard the user, not just onto the application, sometimes to new features that have been developed and 2 additions. So that's user onboarding. It's not anything technical. It's just part of the application flow. Let me just show an example. Application. This is an onboarding. So welcome to the application. They give you a little bit text. Just try to trust that. That's all. That's basically what onboarding is. Onboarding the person to the application for the first time or to a new feature that has been added to the application. I think I shared this link the last time. If you do it, you should have a very good idea of what onboarding is. It gives you the 3 types of onboarding, now the common components, feature promotion, which I just mentioned, customization, and then instruction. So feature promotion, maybe they did something new to the application, they added something, they just promote it through an onboarding. So sometimes you open an application, even though you've opened it before, you already use it, you open it again, and then you see that it's an example of onboarding the images you see when you're about to download the app. Not necessarily. Sometimes those screenshots are like different pages of the app. Everything can load, so I can show you guys what an onboarding is. What's the time? 10:30. Onboarding. Good. So, by feature promotion, so sometimes you already downloaded, you already use the app, you launch it for another time and you realize that they are giving you scores and arrows and pointing into certain things. They've added new features and they're trying to educate you on customization. How sometimes there are some applications you can customize your experience, right? So you can probably maybe move the notification to the side or change this or change that. Anything it teaches is the interface. So these are like the few components of is an onboarding screen. The loading stage, this is an onboarding screen. So you see an image and a text, welcome to your corner of the internet. You will never be bored again. Sometimes there are 3 screens where you swipe and see extra information. Not necessarily the screens or interest you when you're downloading an app. Sometimes those screenshots show you averages. But onboarding, after the app has loaded, the first few screens you are seeing is the onboarding, basically. Try and do read this and again get what it means. Okay, let me see the other questions. Yes, good. RSN, exactly. So you see, you download an app. The first screens you see before you swipe before you get to the home page. Those are the onboarding screens. So sometimes you swipe like 4 times and then you see sign in and then you sign in. The first few screens you saw are the onboarding. Good. So this is an example. Oh, this screen here is an example of an onboarding. So they have an image and they're like, stay inspired wherever you are, create an account, blah, blah, blah. And then they have 4 dots to represent that this onboarding is 4 screens. They have the skip button, they have the login, basically an onboarding. This is another example. Different design, but same concept. This is another onboarding, different design, but same concept. So it's just a way to welcome the user into the application. So this is one by Loom. Watch and engage wherever you are. Then they show you some few these things and then text and then sign in and sign up. So with this, all you have to do is swipe 3 times. You have 2 and then you just sign in. Or what is good about this particular onboarding is it gives you the call to action directly on the onboarding screen. So you don't have to get to the last point before you can sign in. But then they like the skip button, which is good because sometimes you just want to skip. But the reason why they don't have a skip is because they have the call to action. Very simple. So onboarding can be how slides most, can be how many slides? At most should be 3, no 4 at most, but regular industry normally they are 3, but at most should be 4. Okay, back to slides. Oh wait, someone asked a question about user flow. Can user flows be used as a sitemap? No. A sitemap will just list the different pages of the product you're building, but the user flow goes into the user's flow. So how the user would go from point A to point B to point B to point C. But sitemap wouldn't do that. I'll just list the different pages and then link them. That was all. So no, a user flow can be used as a sitemap and vice versa. User flow, I think I've already read the definition. Let me read a second definition. These diagrams can help designers quickly evaluate the efficiency of the process needed to achieve a user goal and help pinpoint the how. That's the execution of the great ideas identified through brainstorming. So if you build a user flow, you get to see where your processes are long, where the flows are broken, and then you fix that. So last week, I gave you an example of the, oh, no, the login. So I said, this is for action, this is for decision, and this is for page. The circle is for action, the rectangle is as a page, and then the diamond is for a decision. The circle is for an action, the rectangle is for pages, and the diamond is for decisions. Okay, now I want to use the platform. Now the user gets in and then we ask them, is this a new user? Like I mentioned, it's for decision. So if the user is a new user, yes, okay, then we take them to the sign up. Right? On the sign up page, the input their details, which is the action or inputs. They input their details and all that. And then does the user exist? Yes. No. If it's no, then input the inputs meets criteria, then input it. So just basically takes you through the flow of how they put it. A user will move from one page to the other. It doesn't end with just onboarding. I think last I showed you other user flows on some of the projects I've built with. It's basically the whole application in few. Let me just open one of them. Oh, not this. Good. You're good. So Splash, onboarding, now the sign up. Yes, I took some of the steps out because I mean it's already in my head. But if you don't want to forget anything, you can just list every single thing out. So I have different factors to just list out what is going to be on the sign up page, then log in, then what happens when the user is on the home and all that. So it just builds the whole flow from start to end. That's a user flow. That's a user flow. Where's my slides? Okay. Now this basically takes you talking to yourself. If you are with another designer, that what is the user trying to achieve? They want to probably log in. Okay, so if you want to log in from the home page, we have the login button. So when they click login, we ask them for their information. We do this, we do that. Okay, what is the user trying to achieve? They want to log out. Okay, then from the settings screen, they navigate to this point, they do this, they do that. It just gives you a fair idea of how the process works. So when I'm building the application, you know the flow to follow, because you don't want to just build it and then mess out a lot of screens. So it's good. Normally what I do is after building the user flow, I pick out the screens individually. So I list out login, then I'll list sign up, then I'll list forget password. So I just list that and okay, probably going to have this amount of screens. Sometimes it might be more, sometimes it might be less, but it just gives you a fair idea of the screens you need to build. Now, point 5, wireframes. I'm sure you guys are already familiar with what wireframes are. So it's a visual guide that represents the page structure as well as hierarchy and key elements. Wireframes are the first user-related deliverables in UX design process and are just a step away from the surface layer and visual design. It's commonly used to lay out content and functionality on a page, which takes into account user needs and user journeys. Wireframes are used early in the development process to establish the basic structure of a page before visual design and content is loaded. So it's normally the black and white stuff we see, the ugly things we see out there. Normally, if you look at my screen, the right side is the low fidelity where it's just pen and paper. You drew something ugly, then on your left is the very high fidelity of this variation. Then this is mid-level. This is another high level wireframe. Now, which is best? Low fidelity is best when you're starting out and you don't have the ideas very clear. You just want to do something very sketchy and then show to the team and then iterate on that. Now, the reason why wireframing is good is that you don't want to waste too much time on building your high fidelity design. Now, all of you, that takes time. Looking for colors, imagery, designing buttons, making things fancy and all that. If you waste 30 minutes on building that and then you go to, you probably present to stakeholders or whatever, and they're like, oh, this is not what we wanted. It's probably not missing. There are some few flaws. You've wasted like your time. But then the good thing with wireframe or sketching is you can do that very fast, present, get feedback fast, come again. So probably maybe in 30 minutes, you can maybe come up with like 5 different variations as compared to if you are building a high fidelity. So it's good for working in a team and then working faster. That should be your first step every time you're working on a project, especially when the idea is not very, very clear. Don't try and just skip that and go to the high fidelity stage. Now, as you can do the sketch, you can either do a mid-level or a high level is not really necessary. You can even do the mid-level where I'm just using rectangles and circles and all that to represent text and stuff. You don't have to spend a lot of time here. Now, prototype, this I can't show you an example, but I'm sure you already know what it is. So it's a simulation of, or a sample version of the final product, which UX teams use for testing before launch. The goal of a prototype is to test and validate ideas before sharing them with stakeholders and eventually passing the final designs to engineering team. Now, one thing you need to know is the cost of development is very, very high, and you don't want to build a product. I mean, like, let's say you skip everything, you just do the high fidelity, the development process takes place, and then at the end of the day, they launch the product and it's totally trash. It lacks a lot of stuff. You've wasted a lot of money. And this is the main reason, or the one importance of UX design. It saves a lot of cost, where instead of just launching something stupid out there to waste money or waste people's time, you can test the ideas before going out. So you do wireframing and you do a little bit prototype. So let me see if I can find an example. Good. So this is an example of a wireframe for a product where it was prototyped. So for the guy to see how everything is going to work, even before we proceed to high fidelity, right? You realize this has a lot of details. So there's probably high fidelity. I mean, high, what's it called again? What was the term? High fidelity wireframe, yes. So there's an example of prototype. In case you don't know what a prototype is, it just shows how the screens are going to work from A to B. All right. What else? Let's see. So that was prototype. Point 7, UX writing or microcopy is the practice of choosing the words people see when they interact with software, an app, or a website. This specialized writing is about designing a conversation between a digital product and a person using it, from the heading text on each screen and the buttons labeled to the navigation menu items and error message. All the text on the interface of an application falls under the term microcopy or UX writing. So normally when we jump on application, sometimes you'll see some text that relates with you like very, very well. That's UX writing. I mean, there are a lot of writers, but then what happens is UX writing or UX writers take into consideration user experience. So they just don't write the copy just like that, but then they add emotions or empathy, I should put it. So that's user experience. Now, some of you might probably be scared because you don't like writing and then you're wondering if you're supposed to do this. You don't have to necessarily do that. If you're good with writing, you can add this as a deliverable or as a skill set and get more money. But then if you're not good, you don't have to necessarily, you just use dummy content or you get the content from the stakeholders. That's it. But if you're good at writing, I advise you add it as a skill sets and get extra money. Now, the final one, which is visual design, which is what everybody likes, user interface design, or the final step, it focuses on aesthetics of a site and its related materials by strategically implementing images, colors, fonts, and other elements. A successful visual design does not take away from the content on the page or the function. So that's the final stage of every process, right? Where we pick everything we have, our sketches and all that. So I'll show you this thing again. This wireframe. This was the wireframe, right? Boom. This was the final thing we have. You realize the difference. You see black and white stuff here, very ugly. But then when we go to the visual design, you see a lot of colors and beauty in there. So that's basically what visual design does. And at this point in time, when you're building a visual design, you make sure that you've already tested a lot of your flows and they are not just building something that would have to go back. I mean, sometimes even after building your visual designs or your UI, you might want to iterate on some of them based on few feedbacks you gathered, but that's after a while, maybe you got feedback from users or clients or that. But at this point in time, it's assumed that most of the stuff being built have been validated in terms of user testing and having people to use your product or your sketches. Problems with visual design can turn users off so quickly that they never discover all the smart choices you made with navigation or interaction design. If you guys remember, the first time I mentioned that in as much as user experience is good, the very first thing the user sees when they download the application is how the application works, how the application looks visually or aesthetically. So if your design looks bad, you probably lose a lot of users because, I mean, you have to be nice before they will talk to you. So make sure your design skill is very good. That's a way to get the users to stay on board. At what point do we deliver a design system? So after you've built the final, that's part of the stuff I would want to mention tomorrow. I'll try and maybe add it to the first 4 slides. But after you've built everything, you can't build a design system when you're trying to get the idea out. So after you've built everything and you know how the brand of the company is, you can start building your design system from there. Then again, if it's not a very big project, you don't have to necessarily do a huge design system. Most of the times, that's what people call style guides. They just build typography skills, color styles, add a few buttons, text fields and all that. You can do that after you are done with the high fidelity design to guide the developer. Let me see if I can have an example. Oops, okay. Is interaction design the same as motion design? It's not the same. They're all interactions, but it's not the same. Motion design has to do with, let me say, animation, where you're animating a logo, seeing a character, unless I'm wrong. Interaction design has to do with websites and mobile applications. So they're all interactions, but that's the difference. Good. So this is an example of a type skill. Sorry, style guide. So it has the colors, the different colors, the typography, all the icons are used, the spacing, the text fields. So this time around, the developer knows every single component he's supposed to build from there. This is because the project was not huge. But if it's a very huge project or a company, you'll probably build a design system, which I showed you guys the last time, where it consists of different button sizes and different formats and states and all that. Oh, this time around, I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Any question?
Okay, thank you so much, Regan. So as regards the class is for Thursday, but I'll communicate that with you. So guys, please, if you have questions, please drop it on the chat, make use of the chat and drop all your questions. please, if you have questions, please drop them on the chat. But if you understood, you can drop you understood. If there's a part along the slide that you didn't understand, you can indicate on the chat too. And if you understood, you can drop. I think we have about 32 people on this call. So please drop all your questions. Thank you. Okay, I think there's a question on the chat.
Yeah, I'm coming. So do you have an example of, do you have a specific example of UX writing? So you can see that everywhere. So let's go to Amazon. Let me see. Okay. So you see this text here, right? What we are reading today is a microcopy. Let me just open Figma website and then let's look at it. Can I still see my screen? I switched browsers, so confirm if you can see Figma.
You can only see your screen, I think, on your browser, yeah? Or Medium, but we can't see your Figma.
All right, I'm coming. Can you see this now? Figma's website.
Yeah.
Okay, so this text here is an example of UX writing. This sub copy here is an example of UX writing. This here is an example. So it's just like content writing, but then this time around, it has UX or a little bit of emotions attached to it. It's giving the users what they want to see and what they want to hear. It's relating with them, both soul, brain, and body. So that's an example of UX writing. It's basically just writing, but then in the UX world. Can you please give more examples of design system? Is there going to be a class on how to do your own style guides? That will not be me. I'm not touching on that. So I didn't get all the UX deliverables like their names. Whoa, interesting. Persona, storyboard, sitemaps, user flow, visual design, UX writing, prototypes, and wireframe. When you get the slides, you can just go through them individually. We don't have much time for me to summarize. Is there going to be, okay, no, there's not going to be a class on style guide by me. Can you please give more examples of design system? Okay, so I think I gave this particular one. Let's go online. Let's just start design systems. This at top, Google Material Design, Apple. Yes, these are design systems. Shopify, IBM, MailChimp. Now I'm sure you guys are familiar with Apple's and Material Design. Basically, what happens is when you go there, you get to see everything about Android, how their sizes work, how their buttons are supposed to be like. Same thing when you go to Apple's what's it called? Human interface guidelines, same thing. All these are design systems. And then when you come into the designing, they have actual components that helps you. So you can, I'm sure when you go to the Figma community and search Google or Material, you should get some design systems. Yeah, this is it. Material design systems. These are the, so basically what these components are what you'll be seeing on your Android mobile. Or the next time someone has gotten the time and then designed them for you. Same thing when you look for iOS, you'll find the iOS design system. That's an example of a design system. But then most of the time, it's because of the size of the project. People don't do a design system too detailed. They just do a style guide, which I showed you, where it just consists of color, the typography, the icons, the text fields. Yeah. You can add the different shadows and all that. So basically help the developers so that they don't have to be going through the design and looking for a particular icon. Everything has been placed on one side in the different color variations. They can see the different text or typography scale, the sizes, the line heights, and all that. So that's and all the deliverables are must, or there are some that can be skipped. So I said this at the beginning. Not everything is a must. You can skip some of them. You can skip wireframing if you are designing 4 screens. You don't need a wireframe. You can skip user flow if you like. They're not really. You don't even have to necessarily do them to present to a class or something, especially if you are working alone. Right? I sometimes skip persona. I skip the sitemap. I just go straight into sketch and then wireframe and then do the visual design. But then if you're working in a big company where you need to validate everything before you proceed, then you would have to do all those. But sometimes, even in big companies, some steps might be taken out, or you'll not be the one to do everything. Probably you have user experience researchers doing their research, and then based on the research they get, they build a persona, everything, they bring it to you, and then you start from the visual design. That's what I mentioned. If you don't want to worry yourself too much and you just want to stick to just designing interfaces, that's one. If you want to do everything, that's another thing. Because if you pick user experience, it's very broad. People who do research, there are people who do the copy, there are people who do the interaction design, the interactivity, people who do the prototyping and all that. So it differs from company to company or from process to process. Let me see any other question. What's the difference between a design system and a style guide? A design system is huge. A style guide is just a part of a design system. So a style guide will not consist of so many things. It will just be key stuff. A design system will be every single thing. So let me just open the one I showed you guys the last time. Pa, 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 pa. So interaction design, while this thing loads. In UX design, there's a different aspect of interaction design that has to do with products and actual physical products. But when it comes to user experience, what interaction designers do is, let's pick your mobile app on any mobile app, Snapchat, WhatsApp. If you click a particular icon, what feedback do you get? What experience do you get? Is it haptic? Does the phone vibrate? Does it just navigate to that section? This is the work of an interaction designer, basically making sure the experience the user is going through in terms of motion is flawless or is beautiful, nice, right? So if you open an Instagram story, how does it come up? That's the work of an interaction designer. So it's just basically about the interactivity of a product, I should put it. Okay, good. So whoever asked the question about a style guide and a design system, this is a design system. You realize that this is very huge. It has different typography skills for desktop, mobile, paragraphs. It has different layouts grid. It's actually huge because last time I showed you the buttons one, where see this amount of buttons and this entire system, very huge, different states, different sizes, and all that. But then a style guide becomes very, very small. You don't have to do a lot of stuff in a style guide. You don't even have to build it. Just, well, most of the time there are components you can just use to help you build a style guide. Okay, there was one I had. Okay. Good. So this is a style guide, the typography, the color palette, the product colors, images, elevations. That was all. But then if you look at a design system, it's going to be very, very huge. So the difference is one is huge, one is not. One is huge to just help developers, like help you gather something faster for the developer. The design system, on the other hand, is going to be there forever, regardless of the project you're working on in a particular company. So that's why companies like Airbnb have their own design system. So regardless of the products they are building or wherever whatever they are doing, they can just pick components from their design system, right? But if you're a freelancer, if you're a single designer where you're working on a single individual project, which are not like huge, like the ones I've showed you, like this project here, I don't have to build a design system. I can just build the various components and style guide for the developer at the end of the day. So in the real world, to answer the last question, in the real world, we're using style guides more than the design system in our project. Yes. So if you are working on individual projects, you're going to be using style guides more, or you'll be building style guides more, because it takes a lot of time to build a design system, like no joke, because you would have to build every single component that's ever going to exist in that product in a few months to come or whatever. So most of the time, it's after. I saw a joke on Twitter. Someone was like, people are building style guides and they are titling it as design system, because you can't have just three components, like maybe let's say what I showed you here, and then call it a design system. No, a design system is supposed to be flawless. Like it's supposed to have every single thing in every single state for everything you're trying to build. So if you look at this side, it has file uploads, it has data picks, data display, inputs, form controls, accordions, media, spacing, shadows, alerts, everything you can think of in building a project is in this design system. And that's what, and there are even ones that are huge than this. So that's what, if you work in big companies, you need that. But if you're an individual, a solo designer, you really need to build a design system, or to be very impossible at the early stage. That'll be it for today. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regan. Yeah, so guys, I believe we all understood everything taught on today's class. Yes, so thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Regan, again. Thank you so much. Yeah, Mr. Makap, do you have anything to say before we wrap up?
Thank you, Regan.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye, guys.